Welcome in. It's the Penn Live Wrestling Podcast. It's Mid-Penn Conference Preview Week. Dave Heckard's joining me here. I'm Dustin Hockensmith. We're moving on to the Mid-Penn Keystone Division now. We're stepping up into these AAA divisions here, Dave, and a couple interesting ones, that we've touched on here late in the week. The Commonwealth Division, and now looking at the Keystone, where, you have a lot of things that are still very much, I think, up for grabs to start the year. I think you can look at the Keystone for starters with a favorite here. And, the coaches, the way that they voted for this, Carlisle is a deserving favorite. They were unbeaten in league play last year. Really good team back. They do lose a few key pieces. Then you have Northern, come in at the second best. Dan Nauman, I think, can kind of engineer a little bit of improvement there for Northern. Redlands in that mix. And I think you have kind of a pretty clear separation between the top three teams in this league and everybody else who's kind of fighting for that middle tier. But what do you make of the top of this division for starters with those three schools?
Oh, the Keystone Division. So I definitely have Carlisle as my favorite, but are they a clear favorite? My answer to that would be no. I think that Carlisle is a little bit of a favorite, but man, my sleeper team in that division is Northern, and I think that they have enough firepower returning. They lost a tight one last year to Carlisle, and man, I just feel like Dan Nauman put in, those guys put in a lot of work this offseason, the preseason, and when you're putting in work like that, you're going to see improvement. Now, that being said, I know Joe Wilson too, and I mean, he puts work in the offseason too, so their kids are going to get better. I think Carlisle has some experience returning, and I'm interested to see the freshman, the new Adams kid, who I had a pretty good youth career for them, and will fill in right around 170 pounds, where they did lose some pretty tough guys. So that 60, 70 pound weight class where they lost returning district champ Sean Smith and the Zimmerman kids. So I think they're pretty spread out. They'll fill in pretty well. But don't sleep on Northern. And look, here's the deal. A lot of times the teams that make it to the top at the end of the year aren't necessarily the best teams at the beginning of the year in that division. They're the teams that can hold it together. You know what I mean? Who can stay healthy? Who can stay eligible? Who can stay, you get skin stuff, like things happen throughout a season. And sometimes the team that wins it all is the team that can just hold it together the most. And, it's going to be interesting to see between, in my opinion, Carlisle, Northern, and Redland, who can hold it together the most. And in my opinion, that'll be who wins that division.
And I do think if you're just looking at overall roster talent, I don't know. There's not a great big difference. There's not a huge separation between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 in this division. And I think in this day and age, Dave, in wrestling, to be able to have numbers that might be in the high 20s or low 30s, what role does that play, as you said, in keeping things together? Because you have even some really good teams that don't have a lot of options. A, if somebody gets sick or hurt, and B, if you want to try to match up better with somebody, you don't have the pieces to be able to move around all that much. And I think when you're looking at Northern and Carlisle, you're looking at two teams that, as much as anything else, they have some options when things go sideways or when they want to match up with people.
Yeah, that depth part is huge, especially in team wrestling, as well as I do. You have guys that, get sick. They're not in the lineup. They're in school. They're not in school. They're eligible. They're not in, and you have to have people ready to go. So, depth is definitely a big part of this. And I feel like, in this division, that's where the Carlisle, Northern, and even, at the end of the day, Redland, have a little bit of an edge is that depth. And, yeah. And even depth as far as like what you're getting in the room. So you're only as good as your workout partner, right? And if you don't have people in the room that can push you, that can challenge you, well, you're only going to be so good. So, the more bodies in the room for, good able bodies to step in and challenge guys and, maybe not be true starters, but they're guys that you can depend on. that's a big advantage. So.
Looking at Carlisle, and I know, you lose Sean Smith, who not only, a district champ, but just I think the kind of tone setter that I think a lot of programs would like to have, just in terms of being smart and disciplined and focused, and kind of setting that tone. But Colton Zimmerman, who has meant so much to them, was a state medalist a couple years ago. But now you look at what's back, and so you have, Jarrett Wilson, who's done a lot of wrestling for Carlisle. You've got Anthony D'Angelo, who I thought was pretty good as a freshman. You can kind of expect a jump here as a sophomore at 160. You got Marquise Miller, who's a sophomore, ticketed for 189. Malik Miller, who's done some wrestling for them at 215. And Leighton Schmick, who should be on the short list of state medal contenders at 285 pounds. That run in the upper weights, not only, you have a lot of continuity there, but it's at weights where there just aren't a lot of teams who can put a competitive guy in each of those spots. So in terms of trying to match up with Carlisle, it is going to prove difficult for teams just because of the experience and the ability that they've got. And not even Mitchell Adams, who expects to slot in at 172. So you've got a pretty nice run of good kids there in the middle and upper weights. And I think in the end, that's just going to be difficult for a bunch of these teams to try to match up with.
And, from before, I've talked a lot about the good upper weights and how a lot of times you secure bonus points with good upper weights. And like you said, Leighton Schmick is an outstanding heavyweight. And, he's my pick for wrestler of the year in this division. Him, and I know the Fratelli kid from Northern had a good year last year. But I just think that Schmick, he's got the tools as a heavyweight, and was a district runner up last year. Lost to Dylan Rodenhaber from Redland in the finals. Who was a senior. So I see Schmick, at the top of the podium in the district. But, I like to see this kid take home a state medal. And he's talented enough to do that. I think he just has to turn that corner a little bit and believe in himself and get that done. And, I just think he's a good looking heavyweight. He's got a good frame on him. He moves well. He knows how to wrestle. So that'll he'll get a lot of bonus points for Carlisle, as will Malik Miller at 215. He has a lot of experience. The Angelo kid, as you mentioned. So they do have some good guys up there through those upper weights that, will score bonus for them. And like you said, they're going to be tough to match up with.
The questions I think are maybe down below where you can look at and see that maybe Northern can try to make a little bit of a run. If you're looking at the head-to-head with Carlisle, Trenton Walker, can he take that next step here as a senior and be a pretty steady producer of bonus points for the whole year? Right. Be consistent, a consistent presence there. They're going to be looking for some solutions that in those lower weights where I think Northern with Rocco Fratelli, they're in pretty good shape there. I really like Cole Bartram learning from that freshman experience. He came in with a lot of accolades, and he was, high praise coming into his freshman year. Not that he didn't back that up, because he looked really good doing it, but I think he just learned some freshman lessons last year that you can kind of hope carry over into sophomore year and help him build. The same thing I would say about Leighton Schmick, to be able to wrestle into that super regional round and be able to get to feel what a state medal winner feels like at heavyweight. That experience can benefit him a lot as a junior and give him a lot of confidence. I think the same thing is going to happen here with Cole Bartram. I would expect a pretty good step forward for him.
Yeah, that jump from he wrestled varsity as a freshman. So now you're a year older. And in my opinion, in high school, the biggest jump in maturity a lot of times is that freshman to sophomore year, right? Or that sophomore to junior. And you're going to see that in Bartram. I think, he had a nice little football season this year. I got a chance to watch him a little bit on film, and, he ran to the ball well on defense. He's a tough kid, and that's going to translate over into wrestling. And I see him taking a big jump. And I think he's a kid that, can qualify for the state tournament. Now he is at 52, and that's going to be a bear of a weight in District 3. So, is he going to drop? Is he going to stay there? I don't know. But I think he's a darn good kid, and but he is at a tough weight. So it'll be interesting to see how, he steps up to the plate there and answers that call, in that weight class.
One thing I would say, you mentioned the tight matchup between Northern and Carlisle, and I think Northern with Dan Nauman there has a way of wrestling up. They wrestle tough in duels, and sometimes you can't really quantify or put your finger on why certain teams are able to do that. There's a tone set that you're going to go out there and scrap, and all these guys do. 36-29 was the score of that matchup, and Carlisle had three guys who scored pins in that match who aren't back this year. So they're going to be looking for those bonus points out of somebody, and Northern's going to try to look to close the gap. I think you got a tight duel in your hands there when they square off. Redland, I think, Brian Baglio's done a great job there too. I think, they're probably, without looking at roster numbers, a hair below both Northern and Carlisle in terms of overall numbers. They bring some guys back, and he mentioned a few guys as ones to watch. Marcus Pleaver at 152 and 160, probably see him at 152 in the postseason, is one guy that he said looks a lot better. Josh Patrick is a sophomore, right around that same weight range. Also mentioned him as an improved guy. And, Bryce Phillips, sophomore this year, wrestled at 215, pretty light, and he's grown into that frame. So you have a little bit of intrigue with these guys, and Redland, you can see some strength developing right there in the middle and upper parts of their lineup.
Yeah, I really like Brian Baglio. He was a tough wrestler, for Redland High School, state champ himself. And I tell you what, the kid that I am interested to see here is the Bryce Phillips kid as a sophomore here at 215. I think he's going to be pretty tough this year. The Palala kid at right around 32, he has some experience. I think he was at districts last year, coming back for them. But I do agree with you. I think they're headed in the right direction. I like Brian. I like what he does. But I just don't think they're going to have enough for Northern and Carlisle in that division. And I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe by the end of the year things can happen. But just looking at what they have returning and what these other teams have, I just think Redland is going to be just a hair below those two teams, but well above the rest in that division. So,
looking on down the line a little bit here, I think the difference between 4 and 8 in this division is not going to be all that great. And you can it's reflected in how the coaches voted, looking at the predicted order of finish in this division. You can put any of these teams in any of these positions, and I wouldn't argue with it much. CD East and Lower Dauphin came in tied for 4th. CD East, 3-12 last season, but they've got a couple interesting pieces there with the big kid, Travis Armstrong, who I thought looked pretty tough. Marcel McDaniels has done a fair amount of wrestling. Thaddeus Cribbs is a younger brother of Levi Krebs, who graduated last year. These are pretty solid guys that you can sort of build around. Now, what else is Bill Prince and that team? What else are they bringing to the table? We'll kind of be able to answer that question. Are they the 4th best team, or are they going to slip a little bit further down the line there? But I wouldn't ignore them outright. I think they've got a few solid pieces. It'll just be interesting to see how it comes together for them.
Yeah, those teams, you have East, Lower Dauphin, Palmyra, Hershey, and Mechanicsburg. And here's the key, the culture, right? Like, you got to build that culture. And I think that's what you're going to see out of these teams this year. Coach Prince back again at CD East here. And then, Lower Dauphin, new coach, Woosner, who was an assistant there for a while. They're going to be looking to build that culture and to build their program. I know, East has some guys returning. The Armstrong kid up top, did all right for them last year. I think Lower Dauphin was pretty young last year, so I expect to see some improvement, in with them as well. That you're moving up, you're heading the right direction there, as far as Lower Dauphin's concerned. Palmyra, Hershey, you got. Coach Bucher, who was an assistant at Central Dauphin, now at Hershey. Great pickup for them, in my opinion. I know last year I was at a Hershey match, and I think I saw 7 bouts wrestled. I think they had 7 guys, 7 spots filled. And I know, talking to Brandon, he has about 25 kids out right now. And again, you're building, but it starts with numbers. You can't fill lineups with nobody. So, I think some of these teams are headed in the right direction, but nothing would surprise me between 4 and 8.
And I think, looking at Lower Dolphin, a big group of freshmen who did a lot of wrestling for them last year. Now, how is that going to pay dividends for them now as a sophomore group? Is there synergy, in having that group stay together? And they've been together, I think, for, coming up the whole way through, guys like Clay Kozer and Joey Swartz and Marshall Stahl. These are guys that can maybe, if they do take that next step forward, Lower Dolphin has some wild card potential there. Hershey, as you mentioned with Brandon Bucher, I think this is definitely culture building time for them. It's building out the basics. And I think the number one thing that they can do right now is just get a lot better at the end of the season versus now, and try to roll that momentum and get some of these kids who improved in year one, get them back. And now you've sort of laid that foundation to really try to build out a little bit more. I don't think Brandon Bucher is looking at this as being a contender or this or that. I really think he's looking at this as, let's get to the basics. Let's learn the basic moves. Let's get these kids better. Let's get their expectations up. Let's get their work ethic and how to go about their business in the wrestling room. It's simple stuff that if they can just execute that well, it can be big in year two, but I'm not really expecting a major jump from Hershey in year one. This is an 0-12 team that, lost probably three of their better guys from last year into this year. So it really is as simple as just working to get better.
Yeah. And you got to have that mindset where, what's coming. And I think, I think Brandon has that knowledge, that experience to realize that. And then the other two teams I want to talk about, Palmyra and Mechanicsburg, also, in that mix. And, again, that culture building. And Mechanicsburg actually has some guys back, a handful of guys that have a lot of experience. And I feel like, they got to take that next step though, right? They got to keep working hard and look to take that next step. But, I think that they do have some returners that, can win some matches for them. But, the 4-8 is going to be you put them in a stirring pot and you stir that pot, and, a different team's going to come out, it's going to come out different each time. So it'll be interesting to see how that division kind of fares out and ends up. But I definitely see, the Carlisle, Northern, Redland being at the top, and then, a battle from 4-8. So.
Lastly here, and as we mentioned, you can put these teams in any order, but Mechanicsburg, light on numbers here for Greg Budman and his group. But what's interesting about them is that they've been trying to bring this group along. They're juniors now, that they've been wrestling together since their freshman year. And I think it's just all about looking at this team and seeing if they can collectively turn a corner. If Greg gets Tyler Budman to take another big jump up, or Jason Boyer or Parker Sample, there are a few contenders there that if he can get 3 or 4 of those juniors to kind of take a leap, as he's been hoping and they've been working to do, then who knows what Mechanicsburg is capable of doing. They're just going to have to not give away a lot of points in these duels just from forfeits.
Yeah, that's the key to forfeit deal, right? So like you said, Budman's son, Tyler Budman, he's going to return at 113. Jason Boyer returns at 120 pounds. You got the Lita Bomb kid returning, Sample returning, kid by the name of Antonio Zeno, up at 89. Jaden Connors returning at heavyweight as a junior. So you're right, that junior class that they have is a nice little group. Hopefully they can just fill out that lineup the rest of the way, to not give up forfeits and give up that 6 points. And if they can do that, they're going to find themselves in some matches, I think.
So it's the Mid-Penn Keystone Division. If you check out PennLive.com, the high school wrestling section, that full preview will be up by the time you're listening to this. Coaches voted the order finished and had Carlisle, Northern, Redland at the top there. CD East, Lower Dolphin, Palmyra, Hershey, Mechanicsburg. Got a few different programs here in different stages of building. And you've got a few programs at the top who have been consistently at the top of this Mid-Penn Keystone. So the expectation, I kind of agree with the coaches here. You're going to see Carlisle, Northern, Redland duke it out. How those teams match up with each other will be interesting. I think you have Northern maybe a little stronger in the lower weights, Redland maybe a little stronger in the middle weights, and Carlisle a little stronger in the upper weights. It could be a fun little ride here in the Mid-Penn Keystone. Joe Wilson and his group, unbeaten last year, looks like the team to beat, but it will be an interesting year in the Mid-Penn Keystone Division. check it out on PennLive.com, the preview for the Keystone. All the Mid-Penn previews are up now, and you can check us out on the Penn Live Wrestling Podcast. All the division previews are in audio form too, so download that on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Penn Live Wrestling Podcast, and we will see you next time.